Today, we're diving into a story of pure rebellion. It's about radical new ideas crashing headfirst into a rigid ancient institution. This is the ultimate showdown, the Alchemist versus the Academy. And really, it all comes down to one single, epic question. Can one person, armed with just a new idea, actually take down a millennium of wrong thinking? Well, that is the incredible story of a man named Paracelsus and his legendary green lion. Our story kicks off in a pretty desperate place, with a problem that nobody seemed to have an answer for. A whole village was suffering from a plague, something they called a miraculous rot. So picture this. A village is being eaten away by this disease, this slow, creeping decay. And the traditional physicians, they're completely useless. Their herbs, their prayers, nothing works. Then, out of nowhere, this wandering healer, Paracelsus, shows up, and he's carrying something they've never seen before, a glowing emerald liquid he calls the green lion. And the effect of this stuff, it was just unbelievable. I mean, while the other doctors were failing with their ancient charts and bloodletting, Paracelsus just applies a single drop of his balsam. And what happens? The dying, decaying flesh literally starts to heal itself as strong and as fast as a new plant in spring. You can see why the green lion quickly got a reputation as a kind of living balsam that could actually cheat death. But, a miracle like this doesn't go unnoticed, and it definitely doesn't go unchallenged by the people in charge. And that brings us to the next chapter of our story, the Scholar's Court. Word gets around fast, right? The established medical community, the academic elite, they hear about his success, but they're not excited. They're suspicious. So they summon Paracelsus to this grand hall, not to learn from him, but to put him on trial for what they called his unholy methods. And this was their big problem with him. They called him a fraud, a charlatan. And why? Because he completely ignored the foundation of their entire medical system, these ancient humoral theories from guys like Galen and Avicenna. He just wasn't playing by the rules that had been set in stone for 1,000 years. And right here, you see the whole conflict in a nutshell. On one side, you have the scholars hiding behind their ancient books, their shields of tradition. And on the other side, there's Paracelsus, standing there with his simple tools of nature, just a basin and his little vial. It's literally the dead weight of dogma against the living pulse of actual discovery. You can just imagine the tension in that hall. I mean, this was a showdown that was going to go down in history, and it all built up to this one definitive break from the past, the trial of fire. In this just incredible act of defiance, Paracelsus grabs a stock of their most sacred medical books, the foundation of everything they believed, and he just throws them into a fire. I mean, what a symbolic and absolutely shocking way to say, I'm done with your old ways. And as the pages are burning, he shouts out this challenge. He says that the light of nature, what you can see and observe with your own eyes, is way more powerful than all the dusty old theories in their books. He's basically asking them, hey, can a single one of your books that didn't get burned actually cure anybody? But he didn't just destroy things. He came to demonstrate. After that huge symbolic act of burning the books, he moves on to a practical proof. He pulls out a piece of spoiled meat to show them his own very real evidence. So in the heat of this great haul, that meat should have just kept rotting. But after he dips it in the green lion, it's preserved. It stays firm, it stays fresh. He was showing them, right in front of their faces, the incredible preservative power of his chemical medicine. And the scholars, they had no comeback. The proof was right there. But seeing isn't always believing, especially when your whole worldview is on the line. The green lion had won the scientific argument, for sure. But changing the minds of the establishment, well, that was a whole different war. So the immediate result wasn't a party to celebrate this new discovery. Nope, it was a punishment for heresy. He became, in a way, an exiled victor. They threw him out of the city that very same night. So by all appearances, he lost. But the story goes that he left with a satisfied heart. He knew he hadn't won over the old guard. But what he had done was plant a seed, a new way of thinking, in the minds of all the young students who had just watched that whole spectacle go down. So he became this kind of king without a castle, a monarch of medicine,
who didn't need the approval of any institution. His kingdom wasn't a city, it was the entire natural world, and his subjects were the secrets of the elements themselves.
So you might be asking, why does this story from centuries ago still matter to us? Well, because the legacy of that glowing green liquid, it became what we could call the eternal tincture. And here's the real takeaway. His radical ideas, they didn't just disappear when he died. His insistence on using chemicals for medicine, on actually observing nature instead of just reading old books, this was revolutionary. He argued that nature's poisons are often her greatest medicines, a concept that laid the actual groundwork for modern pharmacology. In fact, you can draw a straight line from his work to ours. What he called his chemical arcana? Yeah, today we just call that pharmacology. And his crazy idea about choosing observation over dogma? That's the literal definition of the scientific method. He was challenging an entire system, forcing people to look at the world as it is, not just how the ancient text said it was. The man was centuries ahead of his time. So in the end, this whole parable gives us our answer. He proved that yes, one person, armed with a little vial of truth, can absolutely start the process of tearing down centuries of established error. And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought. It's really easy for us to look back and see how wrong those scholars were, right? But what about us? What are the deeply held beliefs, the sacred texts of our time, that are just waiting for a modern-day Paracelsus to come along and challenge them? What's going to be thrown into the fire next?